5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good afternoon. I'm Jim Eskin. On behalf of Eskin Fundraising Training, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the 61st Nonprofit Empowerment Webinar Series. I have to say, I love the number 61. 1961 is one of my favorite years, and it's not because it was the year of my birth, but we'll get to that later. Tonight, we're going to talk about the hybrid ask, which is such a timely subject. First, I like Michael Argent. We're really going to try to create a sense of learning community. Can you share how people can come on camera, both video and audio, and or type into the chat space? Michael, are you there?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was having to talk to someone. Are you asking about the questions?
No, I'm going to ask to explain how people can come on camera and or type in the chat space, but so we'd rather have them come on camera.
Sure thing. So if you ever want to ask a question, you can either type it in the chat and I can read it out, or someone will read it out. Or what we really prefer is that you turn on your camera and turn on your microphone and then come on and ask the question yourself.
We're going to try something new. I keep on talking about learning community. And so we're going to try to get as many people. We're going to go around and introduce yourself. If you want to pass, you owe me a beer. I first want to introduce our subject matter expert, Marv LeRoy. This, I think, is his 10th webinar or workshop. We've counted. We've had meals together in 5 different cities. I like to call him a brother from another mother. And I don't know anybody who knows more about the sector and about fundraising. And I love what he's done in forming the Institute for Nonprofit Excellence. Marv, can you take a minute to talk about the Institute for Philanthropic Excellence?
Sure. Thanks, Jim. And thanks again for another invitation to be a part of this. I think I've been a part of all of the webinars, either as a presenter on this side of the mic or just somebody enjoying so many great people who have come on before me and around me. So, and I feel very much a part of that greater San Antonio community that you talk a lot about. We have a project there now with Reaching Maximum Independence, a great organization in town. I think that's our 4th project that we've done over the years. The Institute's been around for 7 years now, or at least part of it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. And we've helped hundreds of organizations around the country. We are truly a national consulting group. We do all projects, not just campaigns, anything that has to do with advancing mission. And have been able to work with organizations across the entire spectrum of the nonprofit world, which is really amazing. Even in putting the business plan together all those years ago, could never have imagined the wonder of being able to work with so many great organizations. Like so many of the coaches, and there are 41 of us, all independent contractors in the Institute in 20 states and the District of Columbia now. We all had a common denominator or common bond. Most of us came out of higher education, but in creating the Institute, we were really focused on helping the smaller to middle-sized nonprofits, really trying to give people an opportunity who wouldn't ordinarily, think about going into that world. And so we do a lot of, smaller, more modest campaigns, in that 5 to 10 million range. It's kind of our sweet spot. And Jim, we've talked a lot about this. I have an ask pending right now that if we close it, and I expect that we will, I will go beyond the $500 million mark in monies raised in my life.
Well, I have 2 words for you, muzzle tov.
Yeah,
another reason that I like Marv, he's a Jets fan. I'm a Patriots fan, and he really provided counsel to me of all sorts. The Patriots had their first losing season, and he told me what it was like to root for a losing team. I appreciated that. And by the way, yeah, go ahead, Marv.
No, I was just saying more in the way of comic relief than
By the way, when we talk about more money equals more mission, guess what $1 million a minute is? Francesca, guess what $1 million a minute is?
I don't know.
That's not a good enough answer. How about Mallory? Mallory, guess what $1 million a minute is?
The cost that it takes to fly to space.
Well, that's actually when you get close to that, but that's American philanthropy. $1 million a minute is being given to nonprofits. Marv and I have huddled, and we want to have 3 learning objectives today. We're going to talk about asking virtually. We're going to talk about asking in person, and we're going to talk about what is the hybrid model. So, and we want to create a learning community. So I'd like to go around. First of all, is my brother available? I talked about a brother from a different mother. My brother from the same mother is Don Eskin, who's in Sharon, Massachusetts. And Don, I'm probably the only fundraiser on the planet who's not a golfer. Don and his wife, Sandy, are golfers. He knows a lot about golf. His wife amazes me. Just like me, he married up. He married the amazing Sandy Eskin, who since I believe 2002 has led the Ginny Memorial Golf Tournament and is closing in on $2 million to benefit the Jimmy Fund at the Dana-Farber Cancer Center, which many people would say challenges MD Anderson is the best cancer facility on the earth. Marv and I have spent, I don't know, hundreds of hours talking about fundraising. My brother and I are kind of Larry David inspired, and we speak about things like nothing. But yesterday we got off the subject, and he golfs. So I said, Don, what would you do if you were golfing with Sir Richard Branson, okay? And he was considering making a $50 million first-time gift to your nonprofit, and you come to the 18th hole and you're tied. What would you do? Would you try to win, or would you just lose on purpose?
Well, Jim, I probably wouldn't be in the position to be tied.
Okay.
But if I was, I probably would try to win. And by the way, somebody once told me, never talk business on the golf course. I don't know about you, Marv. Okay, don't talk business on the golf course. Wait till afterwards, and I would try to win.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I would like the other members of the community to go around. First, is Hugh Farr with us yet?
Not yet.
Not yet. Well, let's go. We're going to get to Jane in a minute or two. I'd like other members of the learning community. We'll next move to the newest member of the learning community, Mallory. Introduce yourself, your nonprofit, and what would you do? Richard Branson's, considering a $50 million first-time gift to the Borderplex. You're on the 18th hole, you're tied. Do you try to win, or you just, let him win?
That's such a good question. I would probably let him win so that I could then have another excuse to play again.
Uh-huh. Hey, did I skip Sandy Holt, who is a pretty good golfer? Sandy, you're a pretty good golfer.
I don't think I would let him win if I had.
You're a pretty good golfer. Okay, you got Sir Richard Branson on the 18th hole. You're tied. He's considering a $50 million gift to Haku. You're tied. Do you win, or you let him win?
I wouldn't let him win if I had a chance to win. And I think if he was a good golfer, he would understand that. And when we got together for drinks afterward at the clubhouse, we'd have a jolly old time.
Who do you think? Would you buy the drinks for him, or let him buy, or how would you handle that?
I would probably start by, it depends on who did the invitation. If I invited him to play golf, I would probably get the first round, and I'm sure he would offer the second round, and we would continue that way through the night.
You know what I learned from my first $1 million donor? And that's when $1 million meant something. That was in the 1990s. You would have to ask their permission to pick up the tab. I think that's classy. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, next is Dr. Hartman, tell me about the cap you're wearing, Al.
Do you notice the bright red
Boston Red Sox? Woohoo!
Hey, who has the best record in the American League right now?
The Boston Red Sox.
Okay, why don't you introduce yourself and what would you do in the Richard Branson question?
Well, I've never played golf, so if I was on the golf course, they would probably have the security people out there to protect the golf course.
You sound like Spiro Agnew.
But I would suspect that if he expects you to compete with him, and he would perhaps be a little bit suspect if you obviously miss some shot to let him win. So I think that you play your best, and by playing your best, you're showing how much respect you have for him. So I would propose letting him, not letting him win. I can promise you that if he were playing with me, golf with me, he would be looking for recruits for the golf circus club. But I don't think letting him win would be the.
Okay, let's go. Francesca, tell us a little bit about Project Mend. And I don't see who. Francesca is going to be on our job board next week, but you give a little tease now and also answer the Richard Branson question.
Well, thank you, Jim, for the introduction. Project Mend, we refurbished used medical equipment and give it to those in need. So we serve a lot of veterans, a lot of homeless people, as well as senior citizens. We have a medical reuse program, assisted technology program for our veterans, which Texas Veterans Commission has given us a grant in order to provide AT services to our veterans. And then we're just expanding our repair services to the public as well as our clients. And we're currently looking for a grant manager, a grant writer, to help out with grant writing, research, things like that, kind of help.
Is that person going to report to you?
Yes, they'll be reporting to me.
I hear you're a very demanding boss.
I know I'm the worst, really.
Okay. No, I'm the worst, by the way. Hey, Carolyn, welcome to our community. If you could introduce yourself, your nonprofit, and how you would handle the Richard Branson situation.
Hi, so I am Caroline. I'm the development associate at the Classic Theater of San Antonio.
Great place. You put on great shows.
Oh, thanks very much. That means a lot. I am a pretty competitive person, so I don't know that I would be able to turn it off. If I'd been given my all up until that point, I don't think I would be able to turn it off at the last hole. So
But I think your profession, you know how to act, right?
Right. I guess that's true, right? So I guess that's probably exactly right. I would put on a very good show trying my best.
Yeah.
But just, whiff it by this much if I could.
Yeah. Okay, let's go. Let's see. Miriam, Mind Science Foundation. Can you tell and your relationship to Bigfoot? I love the Mind Science Foundation.
Well, it's kind of in our mythology. Any of you who are familiar with our founder, Tom Slick, back in the 50s, he went on an expedition looking for the Yeti in the Himalayas. And of course, he didn't find him, but apparently he came back with a plaster cast of a footprint they found in the snow. And there's some controversy as to which family member or who absconded with the plaster cast.
Nobody did that. But I don't know.
Do I hear a little
Yeah.
one?
Yeah. And whose little one is that?
That's mine. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Hearing.
You better, hey, Francesca, introduce your little one.
Noah, do you want to say hi? You can just say hi from where you're at.
Who do we have there? Who do we have there? Who do we have?
His name is Noah. He just got out of summer camp and he's asking me a Lego question. It was very.
Okay. Well, I would lose in Legos to Richard Branson. Hey, Rob, tell us about your nonprofit and tell us about the Richard Branson dilemma.
Okay, my name is Rob Albright. I do network radio broadcasting of NASCAR races.
Oh.
That is an avocation. Trouble in turn 2. That's me if you ever listen to NASCAR on the radio. I have a background in sales and marketing. My son-in-law and daughter just took over the executive directorship of Camp Bethel Ministries, which is a very large Christian campground in Southwest Missouri. It's been in something of a state of repair, and both from a capital raise position as well as the physical plant itself. So his focus right now is getting the physical plant up and going. And because of my sales and marketing background, I am by default his new director of business development. So like they do in NASCAR, they put yellow tape on the back bumper of rookies in NASCAR. You can put yellow tape on the seat of my jeans because I'm a rookie fundraiser.
Hey, let me ask you, how has social distancing affected NASCAR?
How has it affected NASCAR? Last year, it was very strange as a broadcaster to fight no traffic getting in and out of the racetracks, to see completely empty grandstands, and to broadcast where there's no energy when the race is over and the winning driver gets out to celebrate. So it was a very strange experience. We're grateful that we finally have fans back. By the way, you asked about the Branson thing. I guess I would flip the script there and say, if I ever found out that somebody let me win at anything competitive in order to gain some kind of an advantage or to manipulate an outcome of some kind, I would be very upset. So any scenario, I would do my best. And I think that there would be equal respect earned as a result of that.
I love the input and discussion. Tim Snyder, could you please introduce yourself, your nonprofit, and talk about the Branson Challenge?
I've been having a hard time linking in with the strength of the connection. So I'm not exactly sure about the Branson Challenge, unless you're saying, do you let the other guy win?
Yes. Okay. Let me re-explain it. I think I might write something on it. Okay.
Yeah.
You're golfing with Sir Richard Branson. Okay. And he's considering making a $50 million first-time gift to your nonprofit. You get to the 18th hole and you're tied. Do you let him win or you try to beat him?
Okay. It's important to know I took up golf to get away from competitive sports, and I succeeded. And so I would play the best I could and just have a good time. And I would focus on the prospective donor and not worry too much about how good we were shooting. But I wouldn't let him win. But I've been a fundraising consultant and chief executive officer of a nonprofit for 35 years. So that's what I bring to the table. So I'm very interested in the conversation.
Okay, let me go to my sensei, Marv LeRoy, who really, I was trying to think the other day, how many hours we've discussed fundraising. You know, we discuss other stuff. I know it's somewhere between 100 to 1,000. But anyway, what would you do? Literally, I know if they're going to feel sorry, we discussed that much about fundraising. What would you do? You got Sir Richard on the 18th hole. He's considering a $50 million first-time gift. What do you do?
Well, like a couple of people had mentioned, I used golf as a way to move away from competitive sports. I was a baseball player on the precipice of playing pro ball and didn't want to be under that microscope anymore. So golf for me was a way to get out and enjoy being athletic and the social aspects. I think my intuitive nature as an athlete would I'd probably kick his butt on the last hole if I could.
Yeah.
But we, as a good fundraiser, when we got to the 19th hole where the business could be conducted, I would have a pen in my pocket so we could sign the commitment form.
By the way, if anyone has Sir Richard's cell number, I'd like to call him and ask him what he would prefer. At this time, I'd like to bring Jane Briggs Gamis on. You know, I led 3 development shops and I was pretty good with words. And let me give myself, I'm better than pretty good. I'm damn good, if I can use that word, with words. But as good as I was with words, I was weak with numbers. And a CPA and controllers were my best friend because boards always came after me on balance sheets and all the financial reports. Jane, can you tell, you are available both for a full-time or contract work, and I think this is a terrific opportunity for a nonprofit to pick up someone with a lot of experience. Can you, I guess this is like Shark Tank. You got a minute to pitch yourself.
I got a minute. Right, in 1 minute, it's all about me. Well, first I want to thank Jim for giving me this opportunity to speak in his forum. I'm the first candidate that he's giving this opportunity to present. And he's right. I've had a long career in accounting and management, 30 years at the controller level. But the most important thing that I'd like people in this audience to know is that I was a nonprofit CFO for 10 years. And so I'm a seasoned accounting professional with a deep understanding of the community and nonprofits here in San Antonio. I am an expert in nonprofit finance, where I've had full responsibility for financial reporting, financial analysis, budgeting, cash flow management, and operational accounting, and also the management of accounting teams. So I bring a passion to my work, and I have a positive attitude which really thrives in collaborative environments where everyone is working towards the success of the mission. And in working with the leadership team, the finance committee, the staff, and volunteers, I focus my work to ensure that the mission is sustainable and it continues to meet success. So ideally, I would like to be a nonprofit controller or CFO if that happens for me. But at the same time, I am open to contract and consulting work.
Okay, now this is your cell number and this is your email address. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you are immediately, if I needed somebody to clean up my books tomorrow morning, are you available?
Well, actually, I'm on a contract project with a nonprofit right now.
Are you available for other work?
Yes, I am.
Okay, okay. Well, by the way, we're going to post these slides on LinkedIn and on Facebook, and we're going to get you to work. Marv, let's put you to work. What do you think we learned about philanthropy in the year 2020?
I think more than anything else, we found out how adaptable and flexible and agreeable people in the nonprofit profession are, especially in fundraising. I hope that we learn that there are some new ways that we can go about our business and be successful. And we now have to consider some of those going forward as we get back to what resembles some sense of normalcy. But I think the thing that has always impressed me about this profession is how wonderfully agreeable we all are. We take whatever circumstances present themselves and we make the best of them. And you never know what you're walking into when you're building a relationship with somebody on behalf of your organizations to encourage them to and inspire them to be generous in their giving to your mission. So you have to really be ready to take on whatever presents itself. And that really was the pandemic in a nutshell, I guess.
Yeah, you and I have taught a lot of courses and made a lot of presentations, and you had to fundraise face to face. But lo and behold, social distancing came along. What do we learn works in the discovery, the cultivation, the solicitation, and stewardship of virtually of donors and prospects?
Yeah, for some of us, especially in nonprofits that were more technologically involved in their mission, some of this stuff was probably already out there. People were beginning to dabble and experiment with some things, but I think we would all agree that the concept of asking someone for a large gift in support of nonprofit interest virtually on a computer screen prior to the pandemic would have been heresy. Nobody would have ever
Right.
that or would have ever done it, even if they thought about it. They would have dismissed it as not being consistent with what we've learned over many, many years. I think those days are not over because the school's still out about where we're going to return back to. But I think those tools that we've been having some fun with over the last year or year and a half are going to stay with us. And I really think one of the things I'm sure we're going to get to in the conversation is how we apply them and use them now with regard to our top donors and prospects for larger gifts. I really think that, and Jim, we talked about this the other day a little bit. I think what we found out is this technology now allows us to be closer to the people who qualify for that level of engagement and stewardship. That those people who are your top annual fund donors, who maybe are members of your societies and your donor clubs, who you would rely on direct mail, social media, the phone, can now be given an opportunity to be part of Zoom sessions like this, where you can have face-to-face interactions without necessarily meeting with them, even if they're local. You don't have to do this. So I think our ability to personalize our engagements with people and our interactions with people will be enhanced because of these technologies. I still think, and this it may be me just being old school or just getting older and having done it for one way for so long, I still don't think those top donor prospects and those very generous people that we have in our worlds are going to demand anything less than face-to-face meetings now that we can begin doing that again. Frankly,
you moved right into the next question. What are the limitations of virtual fundraising?
Yeah, like everything else in relationship building, there are no limitations except the ones that exist and present themselves in the dynamic between two people or the few people involved. We dealt with that even during the pandemic. The people who got early vaccines became more able to meet and get out and be in public. People who had high immunities were a little more risky than some other people. I've traveled. I mean, I shut it down like everybody else in March when we were told to, and as soon as it started opening up again right after Labor Day, I was back in the air. I was in hotels. I was doing my thing, getting around the country, but doing it responsibly. There are other people that I know who, even if they could, wouldn't do that. They weren't ready. They just, so you say, like everything else in the way we do our business, we have to pay attention. We all have in fundraising and development, we have antennas. Antennae. I guess it's antennae. Listen to your instincts. Listen to your gut. There's certain ways that we want to conduct our business. I like person-to-person interactions at any level I can possibly have it because that's the type of person I am. And I think, frankly, my personality type is pretty consistent with what you find in the profession. We're pretty outgoing people. Although, Jim, you've had some good presentations by people who called themselves introverts who were in fundraising and had to deal with that.
That's Brian Saber, who's one of the top.
Brian's a good example. But we have to pay attention. We have to listen. All those old adages. You have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen twice as much as you speak. All those things that we all rely upon. But never let your guard down. Never lose the sense of paying attention to the moment and responding in the best way that you can. And as you get to know people, you'll also get to know what the best way they want you to respond is, and factor that into the way you go about your business.
Hey, Marv, this is a detour for a moment, but if some of our colleagues are thinking this is a good time to explore other opportunities and hopefully to move up, what advice do you have for them?
Do you mean in the profession?
Yeah.
Well, look at it. For those of us who've been around for a number of years, and I'm in my 40th year in the nonprofit world, and almost all of those in fundraising in some way, whether the CDO or the CEO or somewhere in between. You couldn't be in a better profession to make an extraordinary career for yourself. There simply are not enough people in our business who know how to do this. And there are more and more and more nonprofits every day who have currently or will have soon a need for professionals on their team who know how to fundraise. I just took on a new project just today. I was on the phone for the first meeting with Moms for America, a great organization. And they've been around 3 years now, and they don't have a team. They're beginning to build a team. Well, within the next 6 months, they're going to be in the market for a chief development officer. And there's probably 100 Moms for America right now getting ready for that moment. So, if you love this world, there's going to be great opportunities. And if you're willing to move and relocate, you can write your own contract.
Yeah. Hey, listen, Marv, talking about getting into this business, I don't know why, but I have worked with nonprofit leaders who are virtually fearless in everything else they have to face in life, with the exception of asking for a gift. Why do you think people are so afraid of asking for gifts, and how can we help them overcome that fear?
Yeah. Well, it's we were talking about Jerry Panis earlier. For those of you who've not,
a great one.
Jerry Panis is probably, the greatest fundraiser in the history of the United States. He certainly was a pioneer, prolific writer. Read what he's written. But Jerry always took the position that it was a great honor to ask and be a part of that moment. And everybody should do it because it's honorable and it's decent and it's exciting. Well, that's not human nature. Most of us were taught from birth not to ask for money. There's a whole process of disassociating yourself from the ask, so that you're not asking for yourself, you're asking on behalf of a great cause. There's all those ways to trick yourself into making it easier, but it still goes against human nature. To be honest, with all of the training that I've done with volunteers over all my years, 50% of them in the moment couldn't say the words. They couldn't ask for the number. And it wasn't because they weren't well trained, it was just because it's hard. John, if you haven't read John Rockefeller's treatise on fundraising and how the honor of asking for money, I highly recommend it. I believe it's on our website. It was at one time, but we made some changes with some of the resources on it, but I think it still might be there. And if it's not, send me an email. I can send it to you. I carry it around all the time. It's a reminder to me that these things can be taught. They can be learned. It can be accepted if you're willing, but I will tell you, the one thing to always remember when you're dealing with your volunteers and volunteer leaders at the highest levels, if they don't want to ask, don't even go there. I don't want people who don't feel comfortable doing it. And I tell everybody when I start a new project on a board of directors, because you can be sure that when you're making your presentation about a campaign and the mechanics of how to do that and the logistics, half of them are sitting there just fearful, about being asked to raise the money, being asked to make the asks. And I tell them right away, I'm never going to ask them to do something that they don't feel comfortable doing. And that settles everybody down, and we kind of go from there. In our campaigns, if I get 5 or 6 people who love that moment and a couple of professionals to work with them, we're good to go.
Right. Hey, Marv, I like to share this reassuring fact. According to my research, organized fundraising in the colonies began in the year 1643 with that little institution in Boston or Cambridge called Harvard. They had their first annual fund appeal, 1643. Since 1643 to 3 minutes ago, nobody has died or suffered a casualty from hearing a no. You do not put yourself at risk. But what would you call, let's talk, and by the way, I have to admit, I'm a slideaholic, so I'm going to jump through a lot of slides. I'm in a 10-step program. I'm trying to slowly work out of it. What would you describe as a virtual ask?
Well, first of all, let me...
No, a hybrid. I'm sorry, a hybrid.
Hybrid. Let me just jump off of your comment about Harvard. A lot of times when we're talking with the smaller organizations, we talk about $5 to $10 million campaigns, and there's always somebody at the table who's been involved with a college or a university and has been a part of a big campaign, and they kind of chuckle and laugh at that. And I say, let's keep in mind that Harvard University did a $5 million campaign once, because you always grow from your previous campaigns. It was in 1670, but that's irrelevant.
Yeah.
Just because it was many years ago, they still did a 5 million before they did a 10 million, and then they did
Yeah.
a 20 million, and now they're raising near
Yeah.
$10 billion in the last campaign. So all campaigns, regardless of their size and impact, have impact and are important in communities. So it doesn't.
Let me go back. And by the way, their endowment now is $40 billion because they got a head start on everyone. How would you describe a hybrid ask?
Yeah. I think hybrid means that you're beginning to mix some things from different concepts and different perspectives. I think that we've always been a profession that used every tool available. Remember the days, some of you are on the screen, might be contemporaries of mine. Remember the days before email?
No.
Remember when we used to send everybody a letter or pick up the phone, an actual physical phone on our desk with a cord attached to something? That was, I remember raising money in my career before you had computers that processed all of the gifts. People were literally handwriting gifts on the back of index cards and putting them in index files. And we raised a lot of money back then. So the tools only make it easier. So when we talk about hybrid, we're talking about investing in tools that we hope will make our lives better. Look at what do we have now? We have research tools. Back in my early fundraising, the research team was 3 people in a room with a whole bunch of social directories around them. You gave them a name and an address, and 3 weeks later, they came back with 1 sheet of paper with a little bit of information on it. Now, in 5 minutes, we can type a few things into a computer and find out all kinds of things about people and research. So the hybrid concept just simply, it integrates a lot of different things. But what we're talking about here, I think more than anything else, when you're talking about hybrid, is doing things virtually on a computer screen, using other technologies, everything right up to the point where you sit down and meet with someone. And even that meeting, those meetings take on different definitions and concepts. But ultimately what you're trying to do is to use all of these resources in these moments in time to move someone along a pathway. We talk about moves management strategies for those top prospects and donors in our world. We have plans for them. We write them down. We figure out timing, dollar amounts, who's going to be involved, all these issues about the dynamics of building a relationship and ultimately asking for a gift. But ultimately, we want to be in front of people. That's always been the rule in fundraising. You want to sit down across from somebody to see their look in their eyes, see their body mannerisms, have it be as personal as it can possibly be. Will we stretch the definition of personal a little bit going forward? I think so. I think we're going to do a lot more cultivation, and those preparatory steps leading up to being in front of someone will probably take on a little different look now. I will say, I do think we have to be careful not to just use everything else in the toolbox right up to doing the meeting if we're only going to sit down and meet with them personally when we ask for money.
Yeah.
What kind of a message does that send to people?
Right. That's a good point. Could you repeat that? That's important.
Well, I think we have to be, again, pay attention, be conscientious that if we're going to move towards not meeting as much or as often, let's not just do it when we're going to ask them for money. Because number one, you look at these people, it's not their first rodeo when we show up. Most people who are philanthropic make gifts to lots of organizations, including ours. They've probably made a lot of gifts to us if they warrant, that kind of attention. But we don't want to just show up and ask for money. We talk about that in campaigns all the time. We do a lot of campaigns for smaller organizations. They don't have a lot of backroom support. They don't do stewardship at the highest levels. We really try to bring them along in doing better stewardship. But you can't go in every 5 years, you do a campaign and make an ask and then never see the person for 5 years until the next campaign and when you're going to make the next ask. You have to pay attention and have a personal relationship at some level. If we're going to, this type of a discussion as being personal, if that's okay with the donors and the people who are your greatest supporters and loyal supporters, I guess that's okay. but let's still be sensitive to doing it the best way we know we should be doing it.
Yeah. And Marv, I wanted to point out, we're very excited about the webinar we're going to have on July 28th. We're going to have 6 recipients of the $9 billion given unrestricted by our Wonder Woman, Mackenzie Scott, and her husband, Dan Jewett. We have lots of slides here. I got lots of questions for Marv, but I always like to engage the audience. Is there anyone at the moment who would like to ask a question, make a comment? You know, this learning community doesn't go forward without you. So, and by the way, we'd like everybody to type in the chat space. Our mantra is nonprofit strong. Please type that in. Marv, what are we?
We are nonprofit strong. And
Yeah.
Jim, where are the t-shirts? Where are the t-shirts?
They're being, my director of marketing is negotiating with the vendor. Do we have any questions or comments from the learning community? I have about a half a zillion more questions for Marv.
Jim, it's Al.
Al Hartman, go ahead with the Boston Red Sox cap. I like that.
Go Red Sox, yes. Like Jim, I have a little background in Boston. I was born there.
Yeah.
But, today I had lunch with a friend of mine who is a few years younger than I am, but he's a very successful mediation attorney. And he was talking about how much he...
Hey, can you help me having lunch with someone? I forgot what that's like. What is that like?
Well, it's very pleasant. You sit in a nice open room and someone comes. Now, it's a little slower service, but they bring you food and they put in, and particularly when your friends pay for it, you know, nothing improves the flavor of food like having somebody else pay for it. But my question to Arvind, to you and others, is that he was pointing out how much he had attuned to Zoom mediation and how he was very doubtful that he would ever go back to his office, that he would continue to do that.
Right. So what's your question?
My question is, what is the age factor in virtual versus in-person? For older people like me, I'd much prefer to be in person, but I'm wondering if it's not really a generational thing or that is going to transform dramatically how we communicate.
Marv and I have a deal. If it's a very easy question, I take it. If it's a challenging one, he takes it. I'm going to let you go first. I might chime in.
Yeah, Al, you absolutely have hit on a really important topic, not just in philanthropy and fundraising, but in life in general. We have a whole segment of our society on a national level asking the question, do we ever have to go back to a workplace? Can we work from home? That's going to change the nature of our interactions and our relationships significantly. I, like you, I yearn for public or personal interactions of people and in more private opportunities to have conversations. But we talked about new tools in fundraising. Electronic giving came along not that many years ago.
Yeah.
Changed the world of fundraising. Everybody was going to raise through online gifts. We were all going to have a button on our webpage, and miraculously, everybody was going to be attracted to it and push it and make gifts. And at some level, that has happened. Donors, especially those under 40, are much more in tune with doing transactions in general online. And yes, I think the numbers of gifts are going up in that regard. The problem from a fundraising perspective is the size of those gifts is definitely limited. Some of that is because they're younger, not established wealth in their philanthropy yet. But some of it is also a lack of trust in having big financial transactions taking place in an online forum. But it's going to be interesting to watch how that goes. I do think that younger people who are much more comfortable with conducting business just like this aren't going to be as demanding of face-to-face, and so there may come a time where they don't even want to do it. They will.
I'm going to challenge you guys a little. I've seen data that says that seniors are the most robust consumers of technology because they got two critical ingredients. They got money and time. And you have people in their 70s and 80s that are using virtual communication to keep in contact with grandchildren, with friends in other part of the country. I think you make a false assumption when you say just because someone's 85 years old that you can't do a virtual communication call. And there are stats, they're buying computers and smartphones and dub phones faster than any other demographic segment. But Marv, let's talk a little about, we're now definitely, it might be in the discovery and the cultivation phase, particularly in the stewardship and thanking. What's some of the do's and don'ts we've learned about virtual communication?
Well, to play off of your comment about age, I think don't make assumptions that people can or can't do certain things. I have an 85-year-old mother-in-law. She's the last of our parents to still be with us. She's learning, especially over the last year when she couldn't see the grandkids. She learned how to use that phone. She doesn't have a computer, and I think that's always been the big joke that the people in the computer industry will always say the fastest growing segment of the population with computer use is the over 70 group. Yeah, they went from 2 to 4. There was 100% gain in that year. In raw numbers, it's still not that big. But my mother-in-law is now on a smartphone. She can navigate around there. Was able to do sessions like this with the kids, which was fun. I will tell you that while there might be an interest and there might be an excitement on the part of that segment of society, the demographic, they're a little slower to comprehend and to get used. So if you're gonna set up an interaction like this with them, make sure you give yourself a little extra time. Maybe you do a little tutorial on the front end, help them practice a little bit, make sure that they're comfortable with the form. Some are wonderful. In your area, you've got some tremendous, the Williams, I think of, they're older, they're very generous, wonderful philanthropists in the area. Barbara and George, I've been on discussions, on Zoom a number of times, and they're very comfortable with that.
And I've seen a lot of development officers deepen their relationship with a donor that say wasn't comfortable with a Zoom call, and they taught them how to do a Zoom call or some other type of virtual communication. And not only did that improve the donor's relationship with the nonprofit, the donor felt they were improving their relationships, again, with their grandchildren, the families. It was an opening for development officers to do something for the donor instead of.
Well, we don't always like to take. It's nice to be able to give something back, and you're right, that would help their quality of life. Other things about this type of forum. We just the Institute just did a feasibility study for a college in Illinois, Heartland Community College. It was our second campaign with them, and it was fun to go back. But we did all of the feasibility study interviews, 51 of them virtually on Zoom calls. We tried to set up some personal ones, and everybody said, nah, no need to do that. And we were all going to have to go in. I didn't have any local person to drive around and do personal meetings, so it saved them a ton of money. So that was a positive thing. But I will tell you, it's very difficult to spend 50 to 60 minutes doing an interview online. And I think it's, you make it seem easy with your 1 hour session, but I think you settled on 1 hour because you felt intuitively that was about as much as people could take in one dose sitting in front of a computer screen.
And I've seen studies. My brother would tell you it's a genetic fault that we butt in, but 1 virtual minute is worth 2 live minutes.
Yeah, I think that's about right. The other thing is sharing materials. There's nothing as effective and powerful as reaching across a table or a desk or someone's end table in their home and handing them materials. So there's the whole tactile thing going on. And again, I think there's some generational things we have to pay attention to there. But, when you're sending things electronically, look, we all struggle with those things. Somebody will send you something and you can't open it. It doesn't quite look the way you want it to. It doesn't present the same way on somebody else's computer screen because the dimensions are a little bit different. There's all kinds of things that make a little bit more of a challenge in communicating when you're sending materials electronically. So yeah, you want to factor that in. Sometimes maybe you want to mail them in advance of the call so that they actually have them in front of them. The only problem with that is we all know that in the moment when you're going to make an ask and solicit someone, you want a proposal. You want to actually put something in front of them that articulates what it is you're asking them to consider. It's hard to do that electronically. I guess you could have the conversation and say, okay, go to your email now. I'm sending you some. Well,
Yeah.
Good luck with that. Now you've got them on the screen doing a Zoom call, needing to go to their email in another place on the computer. It's just going to be ripe for all kinds of bad things to happen. So these are all things you need to consider before you get in the moment.
Yeah.
And then, of course, in the moment is how do we make this type of engagement as personal as possible? Don't just dive in to the moment of the ask just because you're not in front of someone. We would never do that if we were sitting across from them.
Right.
We'd have the banter. We talk about the kids and the grandkids. And, I just saw, and of course, nobody's a better conversationalist than a fundraiser. We
Yeah.
pay attention. We read the news. We listen to things so that we know a little bit about everything. So regardless of where that person takes us in the conversation, we're ready to jump in and be meaningful, in that dialogue. So
Hey, Marv, in real estate, it's location, location, location. In fundraising, it's closing, closing, closing. What are your insights as far as a hybrid closing?
Well, again, the other thing with closing is getting to the moment when they're ready to make an ultimate decision. And
Yeah.
that's another reason why, sometimes it gets a little harder when you're in a virtual environment because you're missing some of those cues. At least now with Zoom and other platforms where we can see the person in front of us, we can pay attention to those things. We get a sense as to how they received the proposal and the solicitation parameters. But there's still, closing is about a meeting of the minds.
Yeah.
So how you discern when that moment has happened is by paying attention in whatever forum you're in, whether you're face-to-face across in the same room or you're face-to-face on computer. You just have to, over time, if you've done this a few times the way most of us have, you know when that moment has presented
Yeah.
itself. But closing is about getting them to make a final decision. The larger the ask, the potential for longer durations.
Well, listen, you're getting to our next question, but first one, before we get to that, how about number of solicitors? Okay, we're going to ask Al Hartman for $1 million. Okay, his largest gift to this point has been $100,000. How many people from the nonprofit should solicit him? Yeah, how many folks should it be?
The rule of thumb is generally 2 people should go on behalf of the nonprofit for one individual. If there's a couple that you're meeting with, whether that's spouses or business partners, you could take a third person along if they bring something to the mix in that moment. I will say those rules really were about face-to-face visits when you were actually in their presence. I think with online platforms, the fewer people, the better. It's hard to navigate. Look at the challenge here, trying to see who's on the screen.
Yeah.
The other thing is, if you have, let's say you're going to have 2 people from a nonprofit and the person that you're talking with about the gift on a screen. You have 3 of you, but one of the individuals doesn't have video. They're in their car, and all you're seeing is a telephone with a phone number.
That happens.
The problem with that is when we practice that moment, when we do role playing, we're looking for cues and we're giving each other, like I always joke, it's like the third base coach, giving the other person signs. If I tug on my ear, it's your turn. There's ways that we send each other's messages, and if you can't do that because you can't see each other, you lose some of the effectiveness of how to do that well.
Hey, Marv, you know, you have so many areas of expertise. I knew you were a pitcher, but I think your best pitch is campaigns and major gift initiatives. So I wanted to give you 2 or 3 minutes to talk about the environment for a nonprofit to either launch its first campaign or major gift or initiative, or its most ambitious campaign or major gifts initiative.
Well, I fell in love with campaigns when I did my first, 20 or 25 years ago, have led campaigns as a volunteer 3 or 4 times, have done dozens and dozens of campaigns now through the Institute and some previous consulting work that I did. You know, the beauty of campaigns is they really help organizations to get focused, not just on raising what would likely be the largest sum of money they've ever raised at any one time, but it helps them to really focus on who they are, and what they represent in their communities, and what more they could possibly do if they had the resources. You know, our maxim, and you started off, you know, the show with it: more money, more mission. You know, most nonprofits do what they do best at the levels they can based on how much money they have. Well, what if they had more money? Could they do more of that mission-oriented, or those mission-oriented activities? Could they perhaps broaden the mission? You know, those things, they until a campaign idea comes along, people don't even ask themselves if there's something more for them to do. I used to have this mantra, and Jim, you would recognize this because we both worked in the community college world. You know, most of those folks in that community, the 2-year community and technical college world, are neophytes when it comes to fundraising. They're way behind the curve. They're not even looking at Harvard. They're looking at the local 4-year state institution and trying to catch up with them in their fundraising. And I used to have this mantra: they do so much so well with so little for so long that they don't think to do it differently. Yeah. They don't give themselves permission to think beyond what's right in front of them. And that's what campaigns do more than anything else.
Hey, Marv, for some reason, the slides are just moving on their own. But Miriam, good. Are you still with us? No. How about Mallory? You still with us?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mallory. Let's just say Borderplex is considering a campaign. Marv, how can they wrestle with these tough questions of how big the campaign should be, who's going to lead it, who's going to make the first big gift?
Well, those are all things there are plenty of people in the world that could help them with. I mean, that's what we largely do. We talk about doing all kinds of things across the spectrum of fundraising, and we do, but the thing that we're most often asked to help people with is how to get into campaign mode and how to be successful in taking that to conclusion. You know, there are three goals in every campaign. Yeah. Raise money, raise awareness and profile, and then raise your capacity to sustain the organization at its new levels after the campaign. So those are all very important things to consider. And I don't know any nonprofit who doesn't want to do more. I mean, that's the nature of who we are. Right. We want to serve more people and do more good and be more impacting. And however we define our community. I mean, we have organizations now that we're involved with who have a national presence, the National Peace Corps Association, Moms for America. These groups are trying to have more presence in more places in America, but we also do campaigns with YMCAs who define their service area as, you know, a 15-minute drive in any direction. Right. So, you know, you have to figure out how to use these moments in time to take you to a place that hopefully you've at least been thinking about, and if you haven't been thinking about, to give you permission to think outside of your box, to use a, you know,
yeah. And we're talking, I don't care if it's in person or virtual, you know, I hear we're in the relationship building business. Right. I once heard a relationship defined as something you have until something better comes along. I think really our goal is friendships, that we don't look at the donor like an ATM, but we're looking at their lifetime value to the organization. And right. Can you talk a little about building a long-term relationship?
Well, isn't that what we all want? We want to, you know, we're going to give time and energy and resources to building relationships. Why not take the long view? see those as taking the relationship to a stronger level of friendship and meaning for the person. You know, we're always trying to bring them into the organization and get them involved. I don't want people just to write checks. I mean, I really want them engaged in the life of the organization. I want them to feel like they're an integral part of it. That's why, that's why we have naming opportunities with
Right.
Yes, we want people to put their name on it because we want them to own a piece of what we're doing. And we also want other people to see that and say, well, I'd like to be involved with this organization at that same level because I care about things too. So that all of these things are about having a relationship, not just pursuing a relationship, but taking on the responsibilities and the obligations that go with that and caring. Some of our great friends that we have in our lives in fundraising are people who we first met because
Right.
we were introduced to them as potential donors to our organizations. I still have great friends in the world that don't even exist in those nonprofits anymore. But the friendships sustain beyond the moment.
But I do want to close. This is the Eskin money back guarantee, and I think Marv will double down on it. The more you ask, the more you get. The more you don't ask, the more you're not going to get. We are in a business of asking.
Right.
Marv, LeRoy, I have asked you to lead a webinar and a workshop. I can't even count. I think we're at number 10. I owe you a parking space if you were at a university. Thank you, not only to me personally and to our learning community, but thank you for the leadership you have provided nonprofits from one coast to another. You are an inspiration to us all, including me. And I want to thank members of our learning community. And I want to thank Michael Argent, what we plan to do. Michael, we're going to give you, I don't know, it's about an hour to do a magic spin cycle. And then we're going to post the recording and slides on Facebook and LinkedIn. We're also going to post a very short written summary for those of you who want to report back to your boss or colleagues what you learned today. But on behalf of Eskin Fundraising Training, I want to thank everyone out there in nonprofits. I mean, you make a tremendous difference in touching, improving, and saving more lives. And continue. We salute you. I'm awed by your inspiration, and we'll see you next week. So stay healthy.
Take care. I'll be down your way, so have the sun shining.
Yeah, okay. I think it is. Thank you, Marv. Thank you, Al. Thank you, Jane, Mallory, Miriam. Go Red